During the Cold War, the United States quietly installed something in Greenland that most people assumed would be abandoned after the 1960s. Except, it was never abandoned. And what it was designed to do back then is exactly what it still does today, running silently beneath one of the most desolate places on Earth. The thing is, when you hear what this installation actually is, and what it tracks every single day, you'll understand why no government wants to talk about it publicly. And by the end of this video, you'll never think about Greenland the same way again. Picture this. The year is 1951. The world is frozen in Cold War paranoia. The Soviet Union has nuclear weapons. The Arctic is the shortest path between Moscow and New York. And whoever controls the ice controls the sky. Greenland, this massive island trapped under an ice sheet 2 miles thick, suddenly becomes the most valuable piece of real estate on the planet. So the United States makes a deal with Denmark, Greenland's colonial administrator at the time. They'll build an airbase, they'll station troops, they'll install radar systems. It all sounds reasonable, diplomatic even. But here's the thing nobody mentions in the textbooks. That deal gave the U.S. permission to do pretty much whatever it wanted on Greenland's frozen surface, no questions asked. And what they wanted to build was something so ambitious and so secretive that even today, historians argue about how much the Danish government actually knew. They called it Project Iceworm. The public story was simple. The U.S. was building Camp Century, a scientific research station under the ice to study Arctic survival techniques. A little city carved into the glacier, powered by a portable nuclear reactor. Impressive, sure. But survivable cold weather training wasn't the real mission. The real mission was to create a network of underground tunnels stretching hundreds of miles across Greenland's ice cap, each one hiding mobile nuclear missiles aimed directly at the Soviet Union. Missiles that could be moved through the ice tunnels like chess pieces, impossible to track, impossible to destroy. It was brilliant. It was terrifying. And it almost worked. Except the ice had other plans. Turns out glaciers don't sit still. They shift, they compress, they fracture under their own weight. The tunnels began collapsing. The nuclear reactor, which was supposed to operate indefinitely, became a logistical nightmare. And by 1967, the entire project was officially abandoned. Camp Century was buried under snow. The tunnels were sealed. The reactor was removed. Everyone went home. End of story, right? Wrong. Because while the missile tunnels were a failure, something else built at the same time succeeded beyond anyone's wildest expectations. And that something is still running today. See, while the military was obsessed with hiding nukes in the ice, scientists were obsessed with something else entirely. The ice itself. Deep inside Camp Century's tunnels, researchers were drilling ice cores, extracting cylindrical samples from layers of frozen snow that had been accumulating for over 100,000 years. Each layer of ice trapped tiny bubbles of ancient air, preserving a record of Earth's atmosphere going back to the last ice age. It was a time capsule written in frozen water, and the data they pulled from those cores changed everything we thought we knew about climate. Here's where it gets wild. Those ice core samples from Camp Century revealed that Earth's climate doesn't change gradually over thousands of years like scientists assumed. It changes abruptly, violently, sometimes within a single human lifetime. The data showed temperature swings of 15 degrees Fahrenheit happening in less than a decade, entire ecosystems collapsing and regrowing within a generation. It was the first hard evidence that climate systems have tipping points, moments when everything flips from one stable state to another with almost no warning. And the implications were staggering, not just for understanding the past, but for predicting the future. But that's not even the craziest part. The installation that's still working today wasn't the ice core drill. It was the radar. In 1960, while Camp Century was being constructed, the U.S. military installed a massive early warning radar system deep in Greenland's interior. It was part of the distant early warning line, a network of radar stations stretching across the Arctic from Alaska to Greenland, designed to detect Soviet bombers the moment they crossed into North American airspace. The idea was simple. If nuclear war started, These radars would give the U.S. maybe 15 to 20 minutes of warning before the missiles hit. Not much time, but enough to launch a counterstrike. Mutually assured destruction required mutual awareness, and Greenland's radar station, buried in the ice and cold, was one of the most critical links in that chain. Now here's the thing that'll blow your mind. That radar system was upgraded, modernized, and expanded over the decades. And today, it's no longer watching for Soviet bombers. It's watching for something far more unpredictable and far more dangerous: ballistic missiles. The installation, now known as Thule Air Base, operates a massive phased-array radar system called the Upgraded Early Warning Radar. It can track objects the size of a basketball traveling at 15 times the speed of sound, distinguishing between satellites, space debris, and incoming warheads. It monitors thousands of objects in orbit simultaneously, and every single piece of data it collects is transmitted in real time to the United States Space Force and NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command. In other words, if anyone anywhere on Earth launches a nuclear missile toward North America, Thule sees it first. It sees it before the missile leaves the atmosphere. It sees it before politicians are woken up. It sees it before anyone has time to think. This installation, built during a war that ended over 30 years ago, is now the frontline defense system for detecting threats that didn't even exist when it was first turned on. And it runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one of the harshest environments on the planet, where winter temperatures drop to negative 60 degrees Fahrenheit and the sun doesn't rise for months at a time. But wait, because the story gets even stranger. Thule Air Base isn't just about radar anymore. In recent years, as the Arctic ice sheet has been melting at record speed due to climate change, Greenland has become the center of a completely different kind of Cold War. A resource war. Beneath that ice lies one of the largest deposits of rare earth minerals on the planet. We're talking about elements essential for smartphones, electric car batteries, wind turbines, and military technology. China currently controls about 70% of global rare earth production, which gives them enormous geopolitical leverage. But Greenland's deposits could change that equation entirely. And guess who's been paying very close attention? The United States, China, and Russia. In 2019, reports surfaced that President Donald Trump had inquired about purchasing Greenland from Denmark. The Danish Prime Minister called the idea absurd. The media mocked it. But here's what nobody wanted to say out loud. The question wasn't absurd at all. It was strategic. Whoever controls Greenland controls access to the Northwest Passage, a shipping route through the Arctic that climate change is making navigable for the first time in human history. Whoever controls Greenland controls rare earth minerals that could shift global power dynamics. And whoever controls Greenland controls the radar systems that see nuclear threats before anyone else does. So while the idea of buying Greenland sounded ridiculous on the surface, underneath it was a recognition of something everyone in geopolitics already knew. Greenland is about to become one of the most important places on Earth. And here's the part that should keep you up at night. As the ice melts, it's not just revealing resources, it's revealing old secrets. Remember Project Iceworm, the abandoned Cold War tunnels buried under the ice? Well, they're not staying buried. Climate scientists estimate that by the end of this century, significant portions of Greenland's ice sheet could melt enough to expose the old Camp Century site. And buried in those tunnels is something nobody planned for: radioactive waste, diesel fuel, PCBs, and other hazardous materials left behind when the base was abandoned. The assumption back in the 1960s was that the ice would bury it forever, that the glacier would compress and seal it under miles of frozen water for eternity. But the glacier is melting, and when it melts, all that waste could leach into the ocean, contaminating Arctic ecosystems and potentially entering the food chain. Denmark and the United States are now locked in quiet negotiations about who's responsible for the cleanup. The U.S. says they abandoned the site under an agreement with Denmark, implying it's Denmark's problem now. Denmark says the U.S. created the mess, so the U.S. should clean it up. Meanwhile, Greenland itself, which has been pushing for independence from Denmark for years, is caught in the middle. They want control over their own land and resources. They want a say in who gets to build what on their ice. But they also depend heavily on financial subsidies from Denmark, which provides about 60% of Greenland's government budget. It's a geopolitical mess wrapped in an environmental disaster, all unfolding on a melting ice sheet. And through all of this, that radar installation at Thule just keeps running, tracking missiles, monitoring space debris, watching the sky. It doesn't care about politics or climate change or who owns what. It just does its job, the same job it's been doing since the height of the Cold War, scanning the horizon for threats that might end the world in minutes. And here's the deeply unsettling truth. We need it more now than we did back then. In 1960, the nuclear threat came from two superpowers with relatively predictable strategies. Today, 9 countries have nuclear weapons. Rogue states are developing missile technology, and space itself has become militarized, with satellites, weapons, and debris traveling at speeds that make detection infinitely more complex. Thule's radar system has been upgraded multiple times to keep pace with these evolving threats. The current system can differentiate between a missile, a meteor, and a malfunctioning satellite, making split-second calculations that determine whether NORAD needs to wake up the president or just file another report. Every day it tracks roughly 20,000 objects in space. Most are harmless, but some aren't. And the difference between harmless and catastrophic is measured in seconds, detected by sensors buried in Greenland's ice, operating in silence while the rest of the world goes about its day. So here's what most people miss when they think about Greenland. They see it as this empty, frozen wasteland, a giant white blob on the map that nobody cares about, except climate scientists and polar bears. But Greenland is actually one of the most strategically important pieces of land on the planet. It sits at the intersection of North American defense, Arctic shipping routes, global resource competition, and climate change. The installation, the U.S., built there during the Cold War, wasn't just about fighting the Soviets. It was about securing a position in a game that's still being played today, a game where the stakes keep getting higher and the players keep multiplying. And the wildest part? Most people have no idea any of this exists. They don't know there's a radar station in Greenland tracking threats in real time. They don't know about the abandoned tunnels leaking waste into melting ice. They don't know about the rare earth minerals or the resource wars brewing beneath the surface. Greenland exists in this weird gap in public consciousness, simultaneously crucial and invisible. And maybe that's exactly how the powers involved want it. Because the moment people start paying attention to Greenland, they start asking uncomfortable questions about who controls it, who profits from it, and who's responsible when things go wrong. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the least talked about but most important places on Earth, consider subscribing. We cover hidden geography, secret installations, and the stories maps don't tell you. And here's a question for the comments. Do you think Greenland will become more important in the future, or are we overestimating its strategic value? Drop your thoughts below. Link to sources and further reading in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.